Thanks for staying with us. We remind you to download the CVM TV app from the Google Play Store. We begin with the CVM Live update. Police in the Harbourview district are already reaping the benefits of their intense policing efforts, which began in March. As Nicole Wilson reports, the crime fighters say they are registering a reduction in major crimes in the area.
Murders, shootings, break-ins and robberies are down significantly in the St. Andrew community of Harbourview. That's the word from Inspector Mark Harris, sub-officer in charge of operations in the Kingston Eastern Police Division. This comes following weeks of increased policing activities in the area. As a part of these activities, police are on the hunt for individuals who have fled the Harbourview community since then.
Some persons of interest. I cannot, based on our policy treating with persons of interest, unwanted person, I cannot divulge your name at this time. However, we are working with other divisions and DIU and the NIB to track some of these men who have left the Harbourview space since our activities a couple of weeks ago.
Inspector Harris describes the current crime situation as calm and indicated that intense policing will continue in the area. He also gave an update on the status of gangs in the area while cautioning residents who protect persons who are wanted by the police.
The gangs are not dismantled. I would rather say they are displaced at this time. However, I just want to warn the citizens of the Harbourview Police District not to harbor these men. Call the police, call the station, call 119 or any police you know and give us information. Do not harbor these persons, because if you are caught harboring these persons, you will be taken before the court for harboring a fugitive.
Nicole Wilson, CVM Live.
And we have another report about a break-in at a school. This time the story is someone has been held. A man was arrested and charged following the break-in at the Holland Primary School in St. Elizabeth on Thursday, March 1. Charged with the offences of schoolhouse breaking, larceny and receiving stolen property is 21-year-old Christopher Campbell of Middlesex District in the parish. Reports from the Lacovia police are about 8 o'clock on the morning of Friday, March 2. Teachers arrived at work and discovered that the school was broken into. One 84-inch flat-screen television set and several grocery items were missing. The police were summoned and an investigation was immediately launched, which led to an operation carried out at Campbell's house. The search resulted in the recovery of the television set. He was subsequently arrested and charged on Thursday, March 29. Campbell is scheduled to appear before the St. Elizabeth Parish Court later this week. The Jamaican secondary education system is poised to benefit from an extensive e-library containing materials that will supplement the curriculum. As CVM Live's Nicole Wilson reports, the e-library was presented to the Ministry of Education by the California-based La Sierra University.
This micro USB drive contains 40,000 books and 3,000 videos representing an e-library developed by La Sierra University in California. This e-library houses teaching and learning materials related to a wide range of subjects, and soon these resources will be accessible to secondary school students in Jamaica.
So both faculty and students will have this available. It is also possible to upload it on their smartphones as well as tablets and other devices. So this is really tremendous, and it is at no cost at all. This is a contribution from the university to the education system in Jamaica.
He says this e-library fits into the ministry's strategy for the deepening of information communication technology in education.
It is all saved on a drive, is not online, so it doesn't require data or online access, and we think this is very revolutionary because there's always a challenge in terms of online access. And it also provides opportunities for students to be self-directed in terms of their own learning and research. They have this information available all the time.
La Sierra University student Patrina Jamieson, who was a member of the delegation who visited the Education Ministry, says the e-library was developed bearing in mind Jamaica's culture. She also cites advantages to using the resource.
What it is doing is putting our students on a platform to complete globally, like the minister says. These books are very updated. As you look on the drive, you'll see books are 2014, so we do have current and updated information for our students to explore in the areas of math, sciences, NASA videos like you saw, experiential learning like you saw in the game. We do believe that every child can learn, every child must learn.
Nicoy Wilson, CVM Live.
Over 350 exhibitors spanning 20 local industries are expected to showcase their more than 2,000 products during this year's 46th Expo Jamaica trade show. The event will be held at the National Arena in Kingston from April 19 to 22. An update was provided at a recent Jamaica Information Service think tank. As Irvin Forbes reports, agro-products are attracting overseas interest.
The biennial expo is being jointly staged by the Jamaica Manufacturers Association and Jamaica Exporters Association in collaboration with Jampro. They will again make a strong push for Jamaicans to buy local.
Many of the products that are being produced today in Jamaica tend to be less expensive than products that are imported. So I'd encourage all Jamaicans to come down, see what Jamaicans have to offer, and see how you can save money and help support Jamaica. We have a significant trade deficit.
At least 506 buyers from 23 countries have registered to attend the Expo Jamaica, an increase over the 431 who came in 2016. Among other products, buyers are already strongly interested in food and agro-processing goods.
A week ago, one of my colleague was in Atlanta, and two buyers registered on the spot because they are interested in our black castor oil. And in fact, they were saying, why didn't we carry some that could be sold right there on the spot?
This mission is part of continuing efforts to expand opportunities for local businesses.
We are engaged in a lot of missions, trade missions, in order to secure markets for our exporters. That is something that we have been on for a little while now and trying really very hard. We went to Cuba and Argentina, and that is yielding quite a bit of success for our members who have gone to get them into those markets.
While organizers are quite upbeat about the outcomes of the expo, not a lot of hard data is available yet about its successes.
One of the things that I must admit that we have to improve for Expo Jamaica is capturing data after the show is held. So we know that the companies benefit because they will call and say that we've gotten this export deal because of being in Expo Jamaica. So I have to come back for the next staging.
2016 we had 105 trade leads generated. And a trade lead says that a buyer came to the show, he spoke with one of our suppliers, and they would have discussed business, they would have looked at the specifications for the product, they would have discussed price. 20 of those trade leads were converted, which means that the buyers went ahead and they actually ordered several containers, I would say, of products.
Irvin Forbes, CVM Live.
Here now is another update. The organizer of the Bible Marathon, which was concluded in Spanish Town, St. Catherine yesterday, March 31, is now saying the word has spread faster than anticipated. Pastor Philip Johnson says he and his team stand ready to answer the calls. Pastor Johnson, congratulations. You successfully had this project where thousands of persons came together and people just voluntarily read. You had children also, and you had senior citizens. How persons just voluntarily came up and read the Bible?
Persons just came up. They were invited. Some were invited. Some just came and asked if they could read. We had a wide cross section. We had children from primary schools, preparatory school. In fact, the solid-based preparatory children came there. At least 40 of them read. And we had several other children, senior citizens, boys, girls, men, women. I mean, people just came and read.
And it seems that the marathon is taking off. You know, we're having a second lap.
Oh, yes. In fact, the team and myself, we're heading to Montego Bay on Tuesday to look at a site in Montego Bay We were invited there by a pastor. We've also gotten an invitation for Linstead, but we're taking Montego Bay, and we are hoping to do Montego Bay in April, which is this month. That's just how quickly we're doing it, because it is like wildfire.
And remind us of the objective.
We just want to remind the nation that the Word of God still exists. We want to encourage people to get into the Word. Even though we have the prayer box and we do prayer, and we even have like a meal prepared for those who come early in the morning. They can get tea and a little bit as they sit in a tent to listen. We just want to remind people that nothing else will change us but the Word of God. We believe the Word is Christ, and as we speak the Word, we're literally speaking Christ into the nation.
This is CVM Live. We go to a break ahead of news from overseas. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on CVM Live. It's now time for news from overseas. Here's Nicole Wilson with the regional and international stories.
In Trinidad and Tobago, political leader of the Congress of the People, COP, Caroline C. Prasad Bachan, says at no point in time did the COP and other members of the National Executive enter contractual agreements with Cambridge Analytica and SCL.
Since these revelations came to the public domain, I want to say that myself and others in the COP undertook a review of all the parties' documentation, inclusive of minutes of meetings, whether they are national executive meetings, national council meetings. And based on those investigations, for the public record, we are not aware of any contractual engagement between the Congress of the People and SCL or Cambridge Analytica.
She also shared that no party funds were used either. The COP leader, however, admitted that previous party members held discussions with SCL.
And in St. Lucia, search and rescue teams have resumed recovery efforts at sea for the body of a Spartan University lecturer. On Saturday, 3 Indian nationals were reportedly swept away by a rogue wave as they were sightseeing along the Canals Beach on the island's southeast coast. 2 bodies believed to be Spartan University students were recovered by the Marine Unit shortly after midday on Saturday. The names and identities of the suspected drowning victims have not been released. Still in St. Lucia, Grace Kennedy has pulled Capri-Sun products from stores in the island. This comes after complaints from at least 5 customers about a mold-like substance found in Capri-Sun products distributed in St. Lucia. Since the reports surfaced, quality checks on several batches of products revealed the presence of tiny leaks in the packaging of a small percentage of them, which Grace Kennedy says may have affected the quality of the contents.
Thanks, Curlin. Hello, glad you could join us for CVM Live Rewind, CVM's weekly recap of the top stories from our newsroom. I'm Joel Crossgill. It was a week when the Prime Minister shuffled his cabinet. The state of emergency in St. Catherine North was extended, and the authorities announced a slowdown in the murder wave. Special welcome also to our viewers in the New York tri-state area. Prime Minister Andrew Holness shuffled his cabinet with significant changes in the leadership of the Finance and National Security Ministries. CVM Live's McCoy Wilson reports.
Recently elected Member of Parliament for North West St. Andrew, Dr. Nigel Clark, is the new Minister of Finance and Planning. Dr. Clark will replace Audley Shaw, who will be Minister of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries. Shaw replaces Carl Samuda, who will be a minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. Mike Henry also moves to the office of the Prime Minister as minister without portfolio. Another significant change in the cabinet is the appointment of Dr. Horace Chang as Minister of National Security. He replaces Robert Montague, who will be the new Minister of Transport and Mining. The Prime Minister also announced changes in the junior minister ranks. Orlando Terlong is to be appointed Minister of State in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports. Xavier Main will be Minister of State in the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. Pernell Charles Jr. moves to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade from his previous post as State Minister in the Ministry of National Security. Rudyard Spencer moves to the Ministry of National Security. He previously held the post of Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Nicoy Wilson, CVM Live.
In light of a Supreme Court ruling nullifying the election of Dean Jones as JLP councillor of the Yallis Division, after it was found he was a public servant at the time of the 2016 elections, a by-election date has been called. CVM Live's Khadija Thomas has this report.
Following the court ruling on Tuesday, the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development decided to have the by-election within the shortest period, as ordered by Justice Brian Sykes. The announcement of the dates was made by Mayor of Morants Bay, Lenworth Rawle.
The nomination day for election in the Yallis Division is April 10th, and the election day is April 27th.
Local Government Minister Desmond McKenzie says they have now fulfilled the obligation as required by law for the holding of the election for the Yallis Division, as there appeared to be an attempt to hijack the administration of the municipal corporation.
While we will welcome any attempt by anyone to seek to gain political advantage and to strengthen one's position, we must also be guided by the principles that exist. And those principles can only be manifested in the ballot box.
Despite there also being vacancies in the Homestead Division in St. Catherine and Maypen North Central in Clarendon, the minister says the primary focus had been on St. Thomas.
Before the court ruling, the standings were 5 GLP, 5 PNP. And the ruling of the courts have now created a vacancy within the municipal corporation.
Khadija Thomas, CVM Live.
Meanwhile, the People's National Party Shadow Minister of Local Government, Dr. Angela Brown-Burke, says it appears the local government minister acted unlawfully in announcing a by-election date for the Yallis Division in St. Thomas. Dr. Brown-Burke says the Election Petition Act provides that the judge shall certify his decision to the chairman of the parish council before a new election can be called. She says the PNP therefore concludes that Minister Mackenzie has acted prematurely and unlawfully by announcing nomination day ahead of the judge's certification and ahead of that certification reaching the hands of the chairman of the parish council. Now, later in the week, the local government minister was constrained to appoint Deputy Mayor Michael Hugh as mayor after the sudden resignation of Lenworth Rawle from the top chair. Councillor Rawle's resignation came ahead of a meeting scheduled for April 3, at which a no-confidence motion was expected to be moved against him and Councillor Hugh. The North-South Highway is soon to be named after a former Prime Minister who has dedicated years of service to the governance of Jamaica. CVM Live's Khadija Thomas has this story.
An announcement that came as a surprise to many in attendance, but was met with approval when Prime Minister Andrew Holness made this declaration.
The Cabinet on Monday approved a submission to name the North-South Highway in honor of former Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Edward Philip George Seaga.
Prime Minister Holness, who was speaking at the rededication of the Bustamante Museum, says former Prime Minister Seaga has played an integral role in contributing to national development.
Edward Seaga was responsible for the development of downtown Kingston. He was also integral, initiated the development and expansion of Ocho Rios as a tourism destination. The North-South Highway creates that link And so it is only fitting that today I have this great honor, distinct pleasure of announcing the naming of the North-South Highway in honor of a man who has also dedicated so much of his life to building Jamaica.
Prime Minister Holness also lauded the work of the late Right Honorable Sir Alexander Bustamante, saying the museum now represents an important era in our history. Khadija Thomas, CVM Live.
Lobby group National Integrity Action has expressed concern about a statement attributed to former Director of Elections Arette Fisher. Mr. Fisher recently resigned and is quoted as stating in correspondence to staff of the Electoral Office that there was a growing level of political influence affecting the EOJ. Deputy Executive Director of NIA, Dr. Patrice Charles, commented on the matter while addressing a police training seminar at the Terra Nova Hotel.
You'll understand, therefore, NIA's considerable concern to statements made by the former Director of Elections, Arette Fisher, of growing levels of political influence on our electoral administration. In the interest of transparency, accountability and good governance, we therefore call on the highest authorities to thoroughly investigate these allegations and to promptly reverse any tendencies that might threaten this huge achievement of confidence building in our electoral system.
Mr. Fisher resigned, although the court was yet to rule on a challenge he had brought concerning his appointment as director. Welcome back to CVM Live Rewind. You can follow CVM TV on Twitter at CVM TV or like our Facebook page at facebook.com/CVMTV. Major crimes are trending down. That's the word from former National Security Minister Robert Montague. He says that whereas in January 2018, major crimes were 20% compared to the same period in 2017. By March, they were only 4% higher than the same period in 2017. Latest statistics released by the Jamaica Constabulary Force reveal that 327 persons were killed between January 1 and March 24, compared to 318 over the corresponding period last year. The figures also show a 15.2% decrease in rape, dropping from 105 to 89 in the review period. There were contentious exchanges in the Senate on Thursday as the upper house debated an extension to the state of public emergency in the St. Catherine North Division. Though the Senate voted unanimously to approve the extension of the state of emergency in the St. Catherine North Police Division, the debate between the opposition and the ruling party raised some salient issues regarding the establishment of a crime plan.
People are in fear. People want to know what you're doing, if you can do something, if your government is up to the task. People just don't want some band-aid approach. Emergency powers in particular areas at this time is a band-aid approach.
Leader of government business in the upper house, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, responded to Senator Knight's claims of a band-aid approach.
I think it's unfortunate for the state of emergencies to have been categorized as an effort to buy time and a band-aid approach. It is a part of the actions that are taken in extreme circumstances to return the levels of crime and disorder to a level of normalcy, of a level of manageability, to allow what is normal policing to be effective.
Efficacy, according to Senator Knight, would mean a comprehensive crime plan, something the JLP has been promising for the past 2 years.
So I am going to be awaiting eagerly a plan. If the plan is not put out, and President, I'm telling you this, we are in March, end of March. If I don't hear a crime plan in the month of April, I'm going to rouse up so far as I can the population to demand it.
Johnson Smith responded with the suggestion that the promise of a national security defence plan was announced by Andrew Holness during his budget presentation.
Plan Secure Jamaica, which is a national security and defence plan. National security and defence plan. The plan includes crime. Why Jamaica has been failing to beat criminality in its entirety is because it has been only focused on crime.
O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rentals Limited has been formally reported to the fraud squad. The company, which was awarded a contract to supply 200 pre-owned cars at a cost of $400 million, only delivered 30 vehicles. The Ministry of National Security has formally reported O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rental Limited to the fraud squad of the JCF. This, according to Transport Minister Robert Montague.
One of the last things I did as Minister of National Security last Friday, we formally sent the files for the O'Brien's procurement deal to the fraud squad and to MOCA. I never wanted to leave that with Dr. Chan. I cleared it up because I don't want nobody call me name, because my name easy for call. And people always hinting how much money me get off of the deal. Well, it gone to the fraud squad, so if Montague get anything, it will be exposed.
Minister Montague indicated that the Jamaican taxpayer was never under threat of losing money on the deal, with the proceeds of the $42 million performance bond already secured, and efforts being made to retain the proceeds of the advance payment guarantee.
And what I ensured was that not 1 cent of the taxpayers' money was at risk, because we had 2 bonds. We had a performance bond for $42 million, which we have already collected on, and we had an advance payment guarantee for $213 million, which the ministry is now in the final stages of negotiating with the financial institution for the payment of that. We received 30 plus cars, so at the end of the day, the people of Jamaica are going to end out with a profit.
Mr. Montague said the handing over of the matter to the fraud squad should be taken seriously by all contractors.
But this is a warning to all contractors, including the one you're going to engage Mr. Bryson on this project. As long as Bobby Montague is involved, if you get a contract, perform. If you don't perform, you're going to bear the consequences of that. I am not here to look no friend. I have 11,710 friends already.
The woman suspected to be behind a travel scam in Manchester last month, Keisha Forbes, has been offered bail. CVM Live's Nicole Wilson has our update.
These were the scenes at the Manchester Parish Court on Wednesday. The woman dressed in the red, orange and white floral dress, Keisha Forbes, is alleged to be at the heart of what appears to be a travel scam in Manchester, which came to light last month. Miss Forbes, who made her first appearance in court on Wednesday, was offered bail in the sum of $200,000 with 1 or 2 sureties. The bail also has reporting conditions. Last month, several residents from Manchester said they were asked to pay $75,000 to get permits to work in the United States. They allege that Miss Forbes arranged to pick them up in 3 Mile St. Andrew to take them to have their passports stamped at the U.S. Embassy. They say she didn't show up and that after calls to her phone went unanswered, they made a report to the police. She's set to appear before the courts again on April 26. Nicole Wilson, CVM Live.
We take another break on CVM Live Rewind. More when we return. Some residents in the residential community of Hope Pastures in St. Andrew are disgruntled about being in the dark for days. Irvin Forbes was in Hope Pastures for the residents' latest stalemate with the Light and Power Company.
A bright Wednesday afternoon in Hope Pastures and the odd street light is on, but inside some houses there's been no electricity since 3 p.m. Monday. Houses on Hope Boulevard, Cousins Close, Keble Crescent and other areas are affected, and residents are unhappy with the response from JPS personnel.
I spoke to one of the fellas, asked him what is upon the problem. They said no, they're still looking, and how it is, so we need to go to the overhead system because it's easier to find a problem. And I said to him, well, Keble Crescent is an overhead system and they have a problem. So what is the difference? At which point in time, he didn't say anything further to me.
The residents have been in a legal battle with JPS for some years. They want to keep their connections underground. The company wants to introduce overhead connections. Some households have converted, but many want to maintain how the community was built. Some feel this blackout adds insult to injury.
We are inconvenienced. The stove, the fridge. We have an elderly person here. You can imagine what it's like.
It's estimated that 75% of Hope Pastures residents have underground connections. Of that 75%, right now, a third have no power. For its part, the JPS says a section of the underground network has, after repeated repairs and rehabilitation, come to the end of its useful life of over 50 years. The company says in anticipation of this, it already established an overhead network to facilitate connections for affected residents. JPS adds that it is 23 customers who are now out of supply, and they are therefore being encouraged to have a licensed electrician install a stanchion, a structure like this column, for overhead supply, and also apply to the Government Electrical Inspectorate for recertification. One resident is not hopeful about this proposal.
My understanding is that takes like a month, 3 months before you can get an inspector to come and do it. So on the basis of it, it seems that if we are going to be without power for the next 3 months.
However, a JPS spokesperson says the recertification process is never that long and it typically takes 14 days. Irvin Forbes, CVM Live.
Building resilience to climate change in Jamaica's coastal areas and fisheries was the reason behind a grant signing at the Ministry of Finance involving the World Bank. In his first action as the newly appointed Minister of Finance and Planning, Dr. Nigel Clark took part in the signing ceremony for the grant agreement between the Government of Jamaica and the World Bank for promoting community-based climate resilience in the fisheries sector.
The fishing industry plays a crucial social, cultural and economic role in Jamaica. There are approximately 50,000 Jamaicans who work in the fishing industry, either formally or informally.
Dr. Clark detailed the amount of grant funding that would be made available to assist in shoring up the vulnerabilities of those involved in the sector.
A grant agreement in the amount of $4,865,000 United States dollars will be signed for the proposed project, which targets vulnerable fisherfolk and any direct intervention that supports climate resilience and contributes directly to poverty alleviation.
The new finance minister also provided a breakdown of what the considerable funds will be used to accomplish.
Of the total grant of $4.875 million US dollars, the amount of $570,000 will be used to fund the strengthening of the fisheries policy and regulatory framework. The amount of $2.68 million US dollars will support diversification and fisheries-based alternative livelihoods for fisherfolk. For example, sub-projects on climate resilience, freshwater aquaculture. And there will be $970,000 to fund capacity building, awareness raising, and behavioral change activities. And $655,000 US dollars will support project management, monitoring, and evaluation.
The story now of a case which involved a senior attorney, which dates back to 2015 and ended in the courts on Wednesday. It's a significant case in many ways, including the fact that the accused lawyer was represented by his son. Curlin Brown met with the attorneys for their first television reactions.
I'm happy it went this way. I'm so pleased I was so ably represented by my son.
This was more than just a celebration for the Foots. Father Don and son Abel Don.
It's a relief. It has been stressful for the last 3 years. And not on myself personally, but also on the family. Because this a stress can kill, you know. And I went pretty close there. I was admitted twice at the ICU.
A strain for the senior counsel with close to 40 years of practice when hit with a single charge of fraudulent conversion. Upon instructions he had to get a lawyer, his son, a couple months into the profession back then in 2015, was entrusted with the duties of representing him, accused of defrauding a minor of $10 million. Both attorneys in speaking out now says this was a case which should never have been brought.
I have a first-hand experience of how oppressive the criminal justice system in Jamaica can be on an individual. This is a clear case of an abuse of power from certain quarters.
3 years after, Don Foot says their footprints on this matter is far from over.
We are going to dig deeper. I am glad that it went through the way it went so and a verdict of not guilty is given, because alternatively some people were saying why not write to the DPP and have her enter nulli prosecute, which would have stopped it. But no, you can't have a nulli prosecute in this respect. It's better you have a verdict of not guilty. And I'd rather have it so too, because I know the DPP well, and we don't want it to appear as if there's any curry favor.
In fact, from this father-son landmark, they predict consequences to flow from what they say was poor investigation.
The entire thing was regrettable, and we need to realize that police officers have very awesome powers, and they should treat with it very delicately. To pursue a criminal charge at all costs, that's really not what it's about. It's about the truth being brought to bear, and no doubt we are grateful for that having been done in court, which culminated in an acquittal.
Opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips is not impressed with the Prime Minister's announced plans to distribute 20,000 property titles. Prime Minister Holness projected in his budget presentation that 20,000 parcels of land will be registered with titles over a 3-year period. Dr. Phillips says the Prime Minister doesn't understand the scope of the problem or of the PNP's plan.
At an average of 7,000 titles a year, in the context where 700,000 people are without title access to land, you're looking at 70 years to resolve the problem, or something like that. We are not in that kind of time frame. What we are talking about is to create a revolutionary legislative framework which will once and for all within a decade resolve this problem, which has been with us for more than 180 years. Time come now.
Dr. Phillips was on another leg of his party's listening tour, this time in sections of northwest St. Catherine, where businessman Hugh Graham is set to take over from the reins of long-time serving Member of Parliament Robert Pickersgill. 52 young engineers will be leaving for China shortly on a 1-year training program sponsored by bauxite company Gisco Allpart. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, who addressed the group at Jamaica House, noted that at one time Jamaica led the world in bauxite production.
We would have had the skill set resident here, but with the downturn in bauxite starting a decade ago, many of our skilled workers would have left. And so, you know the story of Alpart. The plant was mothballed for a long time, for 9 years almost. So many of our skilled workers would have left. So we do have a deficit in skills. So I'm very happy that Gisco has the foresight and is taking an enlightened perspective to help Jamaica reclaim that skill set.